Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen and enjoy my stories every day. The sound of rain pattered against the windowpane, a gray backdrop to the gray thoughts clouding my mind. It had been 3 weeks since the papers were signed, the last I dotted and T crossed on the saga of my marriage to Laura. 3 weeks, and yet the apartment still echoed with the ghost of her laughter and the sharp sting of her betrayal. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, an unknown number lighting up the screen. Hesitant but curious, I picked it up. "Hello." I answered, the word almost lost in the rain's crescendo. "Hey, it's Laura," her voice, too familiar, sent a jolt through me. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice colder than I intended. There was a pause, a breath. "I'm pregnant." The world seemed to stop spinning for a moment. Pregnant. The word hung in the air, heavy and impossible. "Is it?" "Yes, it's yours. Look, I don't want to keep it. But I need money for an abortion, or else you'll be paying child support." Her words felt like a slap, sudden and stinging. I struggled to process them. "How much do you need?" $500. "I need it today," she said, her voice urgent. I agreed without thinking. Within the hour, I was at her door, cash in hand. The exchange was brief, the look in her eyes, unreadable. She thrust a pregnancy test at me, 2 pink lines stark against the white background, before closing the door in my face. Days turned into weeks. The incident gnawed at me, a persistent itch I couldn't scratch. On a whim, fueled by a lingering doubt, I found myself at the pharmacy, buying the same brand of pregnancy test Laura had shown me. Back at home, I opened the box and found the leaflet inside. My eyes scanned the document, heart racing, until they landed on the revelation that turned everything on its head. Digital manipulation of this product can cause a false positive result. It was all too clear. I called a few of Lara's other exes, guys I barely knew but for our shared misfortune. The pattern was undeniable. Each had received the same call, the same request for money, the same pink line test. I was furious, not just for the money, but for the manipulation, the deceit. Laura hadn't just cheated on me, she'd played us all. But I was done being a victim. I contacted a lawyer, collected testimonies, and prepared my case. The evidence was overwhelming. Soon, Laura was facing charges for fraud and emotional distress. The court case was a blur, a whirlwind of legal jargon and damning testimonies. In the end, Laura was found guilty. The judge's gavel was a sweet sound in my ears as she was sentenced. The divorce papers came through not long after. As I signed them, I felt a weight lifting. Laura tried to reach out, to apologize, to explain, but I was done. I blocked her number, her email, everything. That chapter of my life closed with a satisfying snap, the book of Laura shelved and forgotten. As I walked out of the courtroom, the sun broke through the clouds for the first time in weeks, and I couldn't help but feel it was a sign. I had been wronged, deeply and painfully, but I had also grown stronger, smarter, and more resilient. As I stepped into the sunlight, I knew it was not just the weather that had cleared, but my future too. The cafe was bustling, a cacophony of clinking cups and hushed conversations. I sat in the far corner, a steaming mug of coffee in front of me, waiting. My heart raced slightly, not from the caffeine, but from anticipation. Today wasn't just about catching up with an old friend, it was about forging an alliance. The bell over the door chimed, and I looked up to see Tom walking in. Tall and broad-shouldered, with a weary look that spoke of sleepless nights, he was one of Lara's exes, the one who had suffered her deceit just before me. Our shared experience with Lara had turned us from strangers into comrades. "Hey, man," Tom greeted, his voice a low rumble as he slid into the seat across from me. He looked around, a frown momentarily crossing his face, before settling his gaze on me. "So, what's this all about?" I took a deep breath, laying it out for him. "We both got played by Lara, and we're not the only ones. I've been thinking, what she did, it's probably just the tip of the iceberg. I want to dig deeper, find out if there are more out there she's tricked. Maybe even stop her from doing it to anyone else. Tom's eyes narrowed, a spark of interest, or was it vengeance, flickering in them. I'm in. What's the plan? I explained my idea of forming a support group, a place where anyone who'd been manipulated by Lara could come forward. We would offer legal advice, emotional support, and a platform to share their stories. We need to be careful, though, I added. This can't look like a vendetta. It has to be legitimate, helpful. Maybe we can prevent future frauds. Tom nodded, his jaw set. I know a few guys who went through the same thing with her. I'll talk to them. See if they want in. As we sipped our coffee, planning and plotting, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, a new message lighting it up. Are you starting some kind of club against me? What are you up to? It was from Lara. My heart skipped a beat. How did she know what we were planning so quickly? Ignoring her message, I looked at Tom. We need to move fast. She's on to us. He nodded, determination replacing any prior hesitation. Let's do it. Over the next few days, Tom and I reached out to others, slowly expanding our circle. We met in secret, shared our stories, and bonded over our mutual betrayal. Each person brought a new piece of the puzzle, a different angle of Lara's deception. One evening, as we gathered in a dimly lit back room of a local pub, a new face joined us. He was younger, early 20s, with a nervous energy about him. Hi, I'm Jamie, he introduced himself, his voice barely above a whisper. Lara, she did the same to me. But there's more you guys should know. We all leaned in, the air thick with anticipation. She's involved with someone dangerous, Jamie continued, his eyes darting around nervously. Someone who's helping her pull off bigger scams than just conning exes. The room went silent, every breath held, every eye fixed on Jamie. Who? Tom finally asked. Jamie swallowed hard, his voice a whisper. Her new boyfriend, Marco. He's not someone you want to cross. The plot thickened, a new player on the board, and the game suddenly seemed much bigger, much more dangerous than any of us had anticipated. The air in the small, dimly lit room was heavy with tension as Jamie's words hung between us. The revelation that Lara was now involved with someone like Marco, known in whispered rumors through the city as a man of dangerous dealings, had shifted the gravity of our situation from personal vendetta to something resembling a thriller. Tom's voice broke the silence, firm and resolute. We need more on this Marco guy. If he's pulling the strings, we're not just dealing with small-time fraud anymore. I nodded, my mind racing with the implications. We'll need solid evidence. And we need to keep this quiet. If Marco is as dangerous as you say, we can't risk spooking them. The group murmured in agreement, and we began to strategize. Our meetings became more frequent, each of us assigned specific tasks. Tom took the lead on gathering information about Marco, while Jamie and a few others started documenting every interaction with Lara that they could recall or had evidence of, hoping to build a comprehensive timeline of her scams. One chilly evening, as we huddled over cups of coffee in our usual back room, Tom slid a folder across the table to me with a grim expression. Got something you'll want to see. Found out where Marco hangs out, a club downtown. He's there most nights, seems like he runs some of his operations from there. Operations? Like what? Asked a new member of our group, Elena, who'd been quietly nursing her drink. Drugs, for starters, Tom replied. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's more. The place is like a fortress, though. Going in without a plan is asking for trouble. We mulled over this new information, devising a plan to safely gather more evidence. It was decided that Jamie and I would scope out the club, posing as patrons to avoid raising suspicion. The risk was high, but so were the stakes. The night of the reconnaissance, Jamie and I dressed the part and met outside the club, the neon lights casting colorful shadows on the damp pavement. "Ready for this?" I asked him, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "As I'll ever be," Jamie replied, but his nervous glance toward the club's entrance told a different story. Inside, the club pulsed with music and bodies moving in rhythm. We blended into the crowd, our eyes scanning for any sign of Marco. It didn't take long. He was hard to miss, commanding the room from a VIP section, surrounded by a cohort of intimidating figures. Jamie nudged me, nodding toward the back where a guarded door suggested more private dealings. "That's got to be where they manage the real business," he whispered over the music. Just then, a familiar figure caught my eye. Lara, draped on Marco's arm, her laughter reaching my ears despite the thumping bass. My heart twisted at the sight, but I pushed aside personal feelings, focusing on the mission. We didn't dare get closer that night, but it was enough to confirm our suspicions. Back at our next meeting, I laid out everything we observed. "We're going to need professional help," I declared. "This is bigger than us. It's time to bring in someone who can handle Marco and whatever he's involved in." Nods of agreement met my statement, but it was Elena who spoke up with a solution. "I have a contact in the police, someone who specializes in organized crime. I can talk to her, see if she'd be willing to help." It was a risky move, involving the police, but it was our best shot at taking down Marco without putting ourselves in direct danger. Plans were set in motion, our group more determined than ever to see this through, not just for ourselves, but for anyone else who might fall into Lara and Marco's web of deceit. As we wrapped up the meeting, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. Cautiously, I answered, my voice low. "Hello." A pause, then a chillingly familiar voice. "I know what you're up to," Lara's voice hissed through the line. "And you're going to regret it." The line went dead, leaving a cold trail of dread down my spine. The storm was no longer gathering, it was upon us. The threat in Lara's voice was not just a warning, it was a declaration of war. After the call, the stakes felt higher, the danger more palpable. But it also solidified our resolve. The meeting with Elena's police contact couldn't come soon enough. Detective Mira Carson was a seasoned officer, known for her no-nonsense approach and her success in cracking down on organized crime. Elena had arranged a clandestine meeting in a nondescript cafe, away from prying eyes. "I've read through the evidence you've gathered," Carson began, her eyes sharp and assessing as she flipped through the pages of our compiled dossier. "This is solid work. Marco is a big fish, and it seems Lara is deeply entangled in his operations. What's the next step?" I asked, eager yet anxious about her response. "We raid the club," she stated matter-of-factly. "Tonight. I want you and your group to stay clear, though. This is more dangerous than you realize, and we can't risk civilians." We agreed, reluctantly. It felt like being benched in the final inning of a championship game. As night descended, our group gathered in our usual spot, the tension thick among us. Every passing minute stretched longer, the wait unbearable until the early hours of the morning when Carson's call finally came through. "We got him," her voice crackled over the line. "Marco and half his crew are in custody. And we found more than enough evidence of his illegal activities, thanks to your tip." "And Lara?" Tom asked, the question on all our minds. There was a pause. "Lara wasn't there. We're still looking for her." The news was a blow, but not a defeat. We continued our vigil, scouring for any sign of Lara, until 2 days later when Jamie got a breakthrough. "I've got her," he announced at an emergency meeting. "She reached out to me, wants to meet. Thinks she can manipulate me again." "This is our chance," I said. "Let's set it up. But this time, we'll be ready for her." The meeting was set in a public park, broad daylight. Jamie sat on a bench, a wire tucked under his shirt, connected to a recorder in his pocket. The rest of us were scattered around, inconspicuous, eyes sharp. Lara appeared, a silhouette against the sun, her approach casual but confident. She sat beside Jamie, her voice low. "Jamie, baby, I'm so sorry for everything. We can leave all this behind us, start over. Just you and me." Jamie's response was calm, rehearsed. "And what about Marco? About all the lies?" Her expression shifted, a brief flash of anger before a sweet smile took its place. "Forget Marco. It's always been you. I need you, Jamie." As she leaned in, pretending affection, Jamie gave the signal. That's when Detective Carson and her team, who'd been waiting out of sight, moved in. Lara's surprise was genuine, her shock evident as she was handcuffed. "You played me for the last time, Lara," Jamie said, standing up from the bench as the officers led her away. "It's over." The fallout was immediate and intense. With Lara's arrest, the full extent of her deceit became public. She had been manipulating not just her romantic partners but had been deeply involved in Marco's criminal activities, even facilitating some of the darker, more dangerous aspects. Our group felt a collective relief, a chapter conclusively closed. As we parted ways, there was a mutual understanding that our paths would likely never cross again. The bonds formed in adversity were strong, but the reminders of betrayal were stronger. I walked away from that park with a lightness I hadn't felt in months. Lara and her web of lies were behind me, the truth laid bare for all to see. The world seemed clearer, and as I moved forward, it was with the certainty that I would never again ignore the red flags that had once seemed so easy to dismiss. The deception had been unveiled, and with it, a new chapter of my life began, one marked by caution, but also hope.